AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Welcome to another edition of the Curt Schilling Podcast, and I think the theme today is going to be the world is not as they tell us it is. The left continues to deny reality, to deny real life, to deny the fact that President Donald Trump has done more for the American people in 18 months than we've seen the White House do in decades. There's no better place to start this fraud than the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. During an interview on KQED on Friday, I want you to listen to her talk about President Trump and the Republican Party, the party of me, my group, my people, are, quote, so afraid. Listen to what we're afraid of. I'll just let her tell you. Listen up.
One of the rising stars in the party is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She knocked off shocked people back in New York and beat a close ally of yours, Joe Crowley. What's the takeaway from that?
Well, let's just say about that district. It's a very progressive district, and so her message worked in that district. We're trying to win the Congress of the United States. We're trying to win many seats that were won by Donald Trump. And as she is appropriate to her district, our candidates are appropriate to their districts.
Is this going to be another year of the woman, do you think? And why?
Yes. Oh, we're going to have so many women, and that's why the Republicans are so afraid, and that's why President Trump is so afraid. He's afraid of all the women, people of color, LGBTQ numbers that will be added to the ranks in the Democratic Party, which is already a majority of women and people of color and LGBTQ. But it's going to be larger numbers, and it frightens them.
Another Democrat looking away from reality because the surge, first of all, that's a complete lie. Anybody that is not a conservative hearing that needs to understand conservatives aren't afraid of women or LGBTQ or people of color or anybody. We're not afraid of anybody. It's a very simple thing for us, right? The left is all about what color you are, who you worship, or who you sleep with. The right is all about whether you are a law-abiding citizen or not, period. It's that easy. Do you abide by our laws? Do you assimilate to this country? Are you do you recognize the Constitution? If all those check boxes are checked, then you're good. I don't care who you are. We're not afraid of them. And the fact of the matter is that the black vote has gone from 6% in Trump's corner at the election to reports now in various polls have it well over 20%. And if that's true, God willing, we have seen the last Democratic president ever. Because if the black vote, and that's what's happening, this great awakening is an awakening of the minority voters to the fact that the left is not the party of them. It hates them. The only thing it wants from them is the vote. It wants them to vote and keep their mouths shut. And it wants to give illegals the right to vote. And what country on the planet would allow people that don't live and aren't citizens of that country to vote in their elections? And the left is stupid enough to think that we want that. And let me just double this down by this next piece. On Sunday's Meet the Press on NBC, one of probably the biggest frauds in the history of media, and he has exposed himself over the last 2 years, Chuck Todd. Listen to what he said about our lack of trust in the mainstream media. Listen to what basically he calls us idiots. Listen up.
I think the Democratic leadership and the disconnect, Republicans, the Republican base, David, wanted a more aggressive Republican Party to go after Obama and go after Hillary Clinton. And the leadership was always like, no, we've got to use we're always trying to sort of hold back that id in the party. Yeah. And they paid a price in Donald Trump. And I'm thinking all of these responsible Democratic leaders that are preaching impeachment caution Are these people, the base may say, give me Michael Avenatti, I don't want you responsible guys.
Well, right, and I think that's something the Democrats are going to have to deal with. But I tell you, on the Republican side, they got exactly what they wanted, a guy that was going to shake things up. Look, I think one of the best things going in Donald Trump's favor, we know this, is the mainstream media. I hate to say it. I know I'm sitting on a Meet the Press roundtable, but the truth of the matter is 62% think the media is biased. So in other words, if you look at the approval rating of Donald Trump,
well,
the approval rating
the conservative
of the media,
echo chamber created that environment. It's not. No. I mean,
yeah.
It has been a tactic and a tool of the Roger Ailes created echo chamber. So let's not pretend it's not anything other than that.
Well, hang on. Yes and no, because remember, the independents are part of Donald Trump's base, and I think that's very important. A lot of times we say Republicans are Donald Trump's base. Not really.
No, it's a separate Trump. It is a different version of the Republican
But those
Party.
independents also distrust the media. This is not just Republicans. It is many Americans across the country.
No. I take your point. I'm
Right.
just saying it was a creation. It was a campaign tactic. It's not like based in much fact.
I do think it's worth saying, though, you know, to kind of get away from all the politics, what the leaders are saying about this needing to be bipartisan and so forth. They're right. The founders did not intend impeachment to be a tool for what they referred to as maladministration. If you don't like what a president is doing, you have a tool to get rid of that president. Vote him out. Yeah. It's designed for treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. And I feel like there are enough people who say, rather we just mobilize for 2020 than try to throw him out now. That sets a dangerous precedent.
Well, that's why I think it is. Russia has to be a part of it if you ever even get there.
Seriously, those three guys right there, three of the biggest clowns on the left, just basically, did you notice what he said? The lack of trust in the mainstream media was, quote, not based in much fact. So they're basically saying you and I are too stupid to realize the truth from a lie. It's based in all fact. They've lied to us. They've continued over and over and over again to lie to us. And there are thousands and thousands of examples, and daily it happens. And the irrational left, it sounds irrational, especially when you compare it to the next soundbite. On Fox News Channel's Sean Hannity show on Monday, probably one of the leading, he's one of the leading conservative minds on the planet, Mark Levin. And by the way, every teacher in this country should be Mark Levin. If Mark Levin were a member of the teachers union, and every member of the teachers union, this country wouldn't be in the piss poor shape it's in from a liberal perspective. But he talked about why President Trump is in great shape on what would be impeachable standards by the left. Listen up.
Well, the president's actually in great shape when it comes to the law and when it comes to impeachment. On impeachment, all we have to do is vote and make sure the Democrats don't win, and then he won't be impeached. There's an idea. Anyway, that's the headline, though. The president is in very good shape. You cannot impeach a president on events that occurred before he was president. I don't know if people are aware of this. The precedent is Vice President Collier's case in 1873. Judges, different. Presidents, vice presidents, on events that occurred beforehand. So even if they load up their phony list, we ought to keep that in mind. Also, there's serious doubt on whether Mr. Mueller, in his report, can use grand jury information that goes public. Remember, grand juries are secret. Grand jury information is supposed to be secret. There's a big case going on now in Washington, D.C. relating to this. Congress passed a statute to keep this information secret because when an individual is in front of a grand jury, they don't have a lawyer. The other side can't be told. There's no counter to what the government's doing. So they're going to have a big hurdle, I think, to get over it, to even allow the information that's in front of a grand jury to get to the American people by way of Mr. Rosenstein, because that is a miscarriage of justice. What else? Obstruction of justice. I'm going through what they've been arguing. President cannot obstruct justice for firing a subordinate, period. Now, what about this new thing they've come up, conspiracy to defraud an election? Well, I'd like to know this conspiracy, exactly who did the president conspire with? Who is it? Have they been charged? Have they been prosecuted? Who did the president conspire with? He didn't conspire with anybody because there is no such thing. And, of course, the big enchilada, which is a sitting president cannot be indicted, which I've been saying for 18 months, which makes all of this entirely bogus.
It's that simple. Mark Levin is a rational-thinking, very smart person. He cites precedents, the Collier case from 1873, as far as you can't get rid of a president for something he did long before he was even a candidate, number one. And you heard the gentleman in the previous soundbite. You can't just impeach somebody because you don't like them. The left doesn't like him for all the reasons we do. He's exposing them to be the frauds that they are. Yesterday, well, you're going to hear it from an NBC Nightly News sound clip, but President Trump pulled a quick one. If you haven't heard this, you have to listen. He called a press conference to talk about the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. And the media, I think, came into thinking they were going to be in the room getting to question him. But what he did was he called them in the room, and then he called the president of Mexico and talked about the new trade deal. Listen to NBC Nightly News. Listen to this. Fascinating stuff.
A new name for NAFTA tonight as the president renegotiates part of it.
We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. We'll get rid of the name NAFTA.
On the phone,
Enrique?
with Mexico's leader,
We talked a lot about this deal.
a congratulations, but there's a catch. Canada. The North American Free Trade Agreement is a three-party pact. Only two have signed on to the new changes, which mostly affect automakers. The rules require at least 75% of car materials come from NAFTA countries, up from 62.5%, and that 40 to 45% of cars be made by workers paid $16 an hour or more.
This trade deal could be good news for consumers in that it adds some certainty to the pricing of vehicles built in Mexico.
Mexico's signaling it may not move forward unless Canada's on board. The White House hopes for that by the end of this week, an aggressively optimistic time frame. The sooner it happens, the better for the Sartori Cheese Company in Wisconsin, whose biggest foreign customers are our neighbors to the north and south.
Mexico, this is a big step forward. We really appreciate it, having the opportunity there. But Canada is just as important to us. We don't want to take our foot off the accelerator. Let's get a deal done with Canada.
New hope on trade talks for now. Hallie Jackson, NBC News, the White House.
The media didn't get to report what they wanted to report from this agreement, this NAFTA discussion, this U.S.-Mexico trade agreement discussion. They had to report on the facts because President Trump basically made the phone call while they were in the room. And if you haven't heard it, listen to it. You can hear them go back and forth. But the fact of the matter is they didn't get to decide what the news story was going to be because he exposed them to the conversation. And that's a fascinating twist and potentially a new approach, I think, to how he handles this media. Finally, the self-destruction at ESPN is, I would tell you, I would laugh and smile if there wasn't still a few of my friends that work there that I like and don't want to see hurt by this. But the fact of the matter is they have made their own bed and they're laying in it. On ESPN's Get Up Monday morning, co-host Michelle Beadle talked about it's the card, right? The left uses the race card for anything and everything it says is wrong with the right. Listen to her talking about the French Open, who banned Serena Williams' skin-tight catsuit. And she said what all left-leaning people say when there's a problem and they disagree. Listen up.
First of all, I hope Tom Brady took lessons from Serena on how to diffuse the situation just by answering the question. That being said, I think this is not a good look for the French Open or the French, and specifically the gentleman who said you must respect the game. I think there's a racial card being played here because it is Serena Williams, the bootylicious comment. He sounds like the beginning of the, oh my God, like he's just offended. There's no reason to ban the outfit because you're right. If there are many other uniforms that show so much skin, and that doesn't seem to be a problem whatsoever. So I think she has been marked for this, and I think the entire thing is just a bad look for all of them.
I was a little bit surprised at the way she reacted to it. The other thing I will say is I know that at Wimbledon they have a specific dress code, right? You have to wear white clothing, and Andre Agassi famously didn't play there early in his career because of that. Are there limitations, like stated limitations on what you can wear at the French Open? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I should have spent some of this weekend looking it up because otherwise they're just arbitrarily deciding, to your point, this was disrespectful to the place.
Notice how the left doesn't have an issue until they disagree with something, and when they disagree with something, race has something to do with it. The French Open has I'm sure they have a clothing standards. I don't care what Serena Williams wears. Watching her play tennis is a gift. But the left and Michelle Beadle, in her incredible, horrifically liberal perspective, there's a race card. There has to be, right? I mean, because there can be no explanation other than maybe she's just breaking the rules, and they don't like when they get called on breaking the rules. But the fact of the matter is the left turns to the race card, the LGBTQ card, whatever you want to call it, every time that there is an issue with the rules. We're going to talk a lot about the fact that this show is going to be quite a bit of focus on the fact that the left has really created and painted a picture that doesn't represent the world we live in or the country we live in, even remotely, over the next hour. You're going to hear from AWR Hawkins and Mark Walters on our 2A roundtable, some fascinating conversation, as well as Kyle Drennen, who will be coming up right after this break, the senior news analyst for the Media Research Center, on what the left has done to the media and what the media has done to the American people. Back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now is Kyle Drennen, senior news analyst for media MRC. Kyle, good morning. First off, how you doing?
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
I'm continually amazed. Maybe I shouldn't be at this point, but I'm continually amazed at the liberal media's desire to act surprised when they're called fake news. We've been watching for 18 months as they have pushed a far-left, very liberal agenda and acted as if they hadn't. And I guess in a day and age when that's happening, and I've talked to many of the folks that work with you and around you at MRC, and it seems to me you guys are one of the last remaining bastions of truth, as hard as it is to get out. But I'm wondering, how are you guys dealing with these, with the CNNs of the world, knowing full well that their agenda is to push and drive as far left as they can?
Yeah, no, I mean, we are just, staying on them every day. We're cataloging all of the instances of bias. I mean, it's just a mountain of evidence. So, if they want to try and deny that they have a bias or anything like that, we can just, we have the numbers, we have the studies, we have the anecdotal blogs that we do every day, cataloging this. And, this week we saw it again with this Jacksonville shooting, this horrible shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, and CNN, immediately went to politicize it.
I'm also asking, this latest out of CNN, the Russia conspiracy theory and the fact that CNN employees are coming out and admitting that management is pushing them to do things and act and do things differently. And they had Carl Bernstein on, who is at the center of this newest scandal. And it almost feels like they don't care about ratings. I know that I don't know that can be true because the ratings drive, the revenue and revenue streams for stations like CNN. But it seems to me that they've kind of thrown caution to the wind, and it doesn't matter that we know who and what they are. They're going to be what they are going to be, and they're going to say the things they're going to say, regardless of the truth.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's in the Trump era, it's CNN and a lot of the media just feel like, they've sort of thrown standards out the window. They've thrown any kind of principles of, fairness, accuracy, all of that seems to be out the window, and they can just, sort of accuse anybody, in the Trump administration of whatever they want, and even if it's then proven, false or inaccurate, they very rarely do they correct the record when they make a mistake on their reporting. They just sort of sweep it under the rug, move on, and then just go to the next story that, whether it's confirmed or not. I mean, speaking of the Russia story, Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney, basically has admitted to CNN now that he made up, or that he really didn't know whether Michael Cohen knew that Donald Trump knew about that Trump Tower meeting with a Russian lawyer. Lanny Davis, was their source saying that, oh, yes, Michael Cohen says Donald Trump absolutely knew about this meeting. And now he goes on CNN and says, well, no, I didn't really know that. And, CNN is still standing by the story like, oh, well, we have other sources who suggest, this is still accurate, even though, the story is basically fallen apart. So it's, all of their sort of, supposed journalistic standards they've gone out the window.
being exposed to the media as I was for over 20 years, I know, and I've known for decades, that an anonymous source is oftentimes slang for "I just made this up," and I say that somewhat comedically, but it's true. And this anonymous source, it turns out that there was a lengthy piece in which Bernstein is kind of the center of this entire thing, talking about Cohen admitting to knowing all of this stuff, and that he would be willing to testify to things that implicate President Trump in a crime, were lies. And they knowingly talked about this. They knowingly published these stories, and they know it's not true. They're not being held to account. There is no penalty for this. This is, I don't know any other way to put this. It's just straight, flat out not lying, and they're doing it and willingly and knowingly and on purpose.
They're developing a reputation for, not getting things right and not being, a legitimate source anymore. And that's just, it's going to continue to drive viewers away. Not that CNN has great ratings to begin with. And and they're marginalizing themselves. They're making, this is, people in the media wonder why, so many people don't trust the media and have such a low opinion of the media. Well, it's this sort of thing. And they're just intensifying that feeling among the public. And, they just don't seem to realize it.
Great point. They're truly, and I wonder, they're marginalizing themselves. That's just the simplest and easiest way to put this, because it seems to be almost daily. And I think that there's, I don't know. I don't know how to put it, but Carl Bernstein, given how he became famous, it seems to me would be as far away from something like this as he could be, instead of perpetrating exactly this thing. And you've got I think John Sciutto at CNN, or Jim Sciutto, who's been caught, I think, 3 or 4 times in the last week reporting fake news. And again, somebody is giving the okay because I assume, like every news show, there's a boss, there's an editor, there's a chief who says, hey, Kate, let's go run with this story. At some point, that person has to look at it and go, wow, we just have no credibility. And I feel like they passed that point a long time ago.
I think in this Trump era, it seems like everything is too good to check. Everything is, whatever story comes in, that it may have the worst assumptions about Trump or people around, and let's just run with it. That sounds right. Let's, that feels like, that feels like it's true, so let's go with it. I mean, there's that sort of attitude in the press nowadays where they want something to be true. They want to believe, the worst about, politicians they don't like, and so they'll just seize on it, run with it, before they've got all the facts in a row, before they've really double-checked everything. They just run with it because they want it to be true. And that is the most insidious thing about media bias. Is it's journalists just they want to confirm their bias. They want to confirm what they already believe, and so they'll run with stories that may not be true.
It's a self-destructive race to be first. I mean, I don't know that this has absolutely nothing to do with being right. I mean, that is probably the most disturbing thing. And I keep I was mentioning yesterday, and kind of I made a closing statement about trust. I mean, it seems to me that everything we trust and everyone we trust and everything we rely on is turning against us, from the government to the Department of Justice to the, those in life, the Catholic Church and the media, all of it. I mean, it seems like every time we turn to somebody for a scintilla of truth, we're betrayed. And I don't say that lightly, because I mean, only in this world could CNN lie day in and day out, and Jake Tapper could go on the air and say, this is the golden age of journalism because President Trump is building policies on racism. I mean, and still have a job.
They are so obsessed with trying to take down this administration that they're letting all of their credibility go. They're just giving up all of their supposed standards and principles of journalism, and it's there's not going to be anything left by the end of this.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's just it's one of those times. The world it feels like up is down and down is up and north is south and south is north, and companies like yours and MRC and I think we at Breitbart are suffering time and time again for telling the truth and for revealing and exposing these people, and the left has managed to turn a large uninformed portion of the population into people who just dismiss truth. It's almost like, well, and I see it, and I'm sure you guys hear it too. You can make an argument and cite a source from Breitbart, and I try to explain to people, listen, facts are source agnostic. Facts are facts, and at Breitbart we are very interested in reporting fact. We report a lot of opinion, and we are a conservative-leaning group of people, but facts are facts at the end of the day. But they've made it so people can dismiss Breitbart offhand. Oh, Breitbart, that crazy alt-right news source, and it has no applicable use for us. But the people doing it are the actual people that are guilty of being those radical, untrustworthy, agenda-pushing people in the media, and it's almost as if they refuse to look in the mirror.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely the case. One example, Chuck Todd on Meet the Press this Sunday, was confronted by a guest about, media bias, sort of the overwhelming evidence of there being a liberal media bias. And Chuck Todd says, no, that was just invented by Fox News and by conservative media. And, that's not real. That was manufactured. There's no truth to it. There's no basis for any of that. And it's just this kind of total self-denial. I mean, just kind of total, lack of self-awareness by people in the press. It's staggering.
It's offensive in the sense that these people think we're as stupid as they sound. I mean, they honestly believe we don't. I mean, I don't know. I keep saying I'm offended by the fact that they think I'm that dumb, and that to me is probably where I go more than anything. The Chuck Todds and the Jake Tappers of the world and the Don Lemons are acting as if we're not smart enough to see what they're trying to do, and it's almost like Clinton and the Clinton crime syndicate in the sense that, no, at some point, my dad always used to say, when you get in trouble, one time, that's one thing. But when you get in trouble 10 or 15 times, the one thing you got to realize is there's only one constant in this, and that is you, right? I mean, and every day we talk about fake news and lying, and the one constant in the last 18 months has been the left. They have been on the leading edge of Trump derangement syndrome since the day he won the election. I don't question for a second, and I'm sure you guys have seen this as well, a lot of what we're finding out, we were only finding out because he won. Because if she had won, a lot of this stuff would have never been revealed, and that was the plan.
Yeah, no, I think, Hillary Clinton, there's plenty of things to look at, with the Clinton campaign, obviously the Steele dossier and all this sort of thing. And, no one is interested in any of that, because she lost and because Trump won. And so, it would have been, totally different if things were reversed, because there would have been questions about the Clinton campaign, but, no one would have been interested in talking about any of that. So it's, just the classic double standard.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I think that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot, Channel 125. We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Joining me now, as they do each week, is daily host of Armed American Radio, Mark Walters. You can hear him every day of the week, and on Sunday nights he has his special show. And A.W. Hawkins, Breitbart's Second Amendment columnist and leading researcher, I guess is the best way to put this. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Curt.
Hey, A.W., I'm going to start with you. It turns out that David Katz, the gentleman who opened fire at the at this gaming convention in Jacksonville. He acquired his firearm legally, and the left. Well, I mean, to no surprise to any of us, that the left continued to came out immediately for more gun control. I don't know what law. AW, is there a law that would have prevented this guy from getting his firearm short of the Second Amendment being abolished, or no?
No. Well, no. And to ask your question another way, is there a gun control that he complied with, or is there even another law they could add? If you look at Maryland has some of the most stringent gun controls in the country, probably only surpassed by California, maybe California and New York. And so that's where he lived. That's where he complied with all gun controls, state and federal, to acquire his gun. And then he traveled to Florida, where they now have waiting periods for all gun purchases. They ban 18 to 20-year-olds from buying guns. They have gun confiscation orders. On and on I can go. Every one of the Parkland gun controllers' favorite gun control is in place, and none of them mattered. So, no, Kurt, there's no law they could add that would have stopped this man from doing what he did.
Let me pose this question another way. Let me ask you, Mark. AW listed an enormous list of the most recent public shooters who have acquired their firearm legally. I'm scouring this list, Mark, but I don't see a member of the NRA. Is that a coincidence, or is that just exactly how it works?
No, it pretty much is exactly how it works. It's not a coincidence at all. And to kind of take off a little bit on what AWR said, you're talking about there's no form of gun control going to work here. We see that already, as he just mentioned. The wish list of the left is now in place in Florida. David Hogg put a tweet out yesterday, our favorite anti-gunner who knows everything about everything at 18 years old, put a tweet out yesterday that said to Marco Rubio, that said, Senator, how many more of these shootings have to happen in Florida before you do something? And, of course, he listed nothing because everything that he wanted he got in Florida. And I want to expand on the Maryland gun controls. It's about a 7 or 8 step process to buy a gun in Maryland. They also have 1 gun a month. This individual had 2 guns. So he apparently planned this at least a month in advance to take 2 guns, because if assuming he made 2 purchases, it would have taken him 30 days to purchase both of those handguns, get the handgun qualification license and so forth. But the gun grabbers are overlooking the fact that this was a pistol or a pair of pistols. But wait a minute. I thought we needed to ban the AR-15, not all guns, according to David Hogg himself. There was a piece out on CNN that, if your listeners get a chance to look at, it's called "Don't Try to Sugarcoat the Horror of Jacksonville." And in the final sentences, it says it just keeps happening. Maybe the answer isn't in sanitizing the suffering, but in embracing it. And he's talking about watching the disturbing video and listening to the screams. And then he says, hearing it, all of us, and knowing what we have to do. Now, I'm going to submit to you that what he's saying is we need to ban firearms, period. Right. All guns. That's what the writer is saying. And he's saying if we go and we listen to the video and listen to the audio of the screams, that's what the conclusion we're going to draw. Well, I would argue that when I listen to it and I watch it, and it's as disturbing to me as it is to him, that I would say just the opposite. We all know what we have to do. We need to get rid of gun-free zones. We need to arm our people. We need to be able to defend ourselves. And this is the difference between the two sides, and it's highlighted by that piece. And the answer overall, all to your question, is absolutely not. Is it coincidental? Because people, NRA members in particular, know exactly what the three of us are talking about right now. That's why they're not on that list.
AW, let me ask you this. On the top level, I saw a bunch of this, but I'm going to ask you first. My guess is, based on knowing the laws of not just my state, but of the federal laws, before the trigger was pulled in this incident, this person had already committed multiple crimes. Whether it be possessing a firearm in a gun-free zone, which he did, but the only thing that the laws dictated in this instance that was that nobody in the building except for the criminal had a gun.
Right. No, that's what I was thinking while Mark was talking. I agree with everything Mark said, but just in addition, if I listen to the video, or the audio of that, when I hear those people scream, I think how inhumane.
Right.
How inhumane that those people were forced to be unarmed and defenseless. And that's to your point. And see, that law, the rule at Jacksonville Landing that prohibits even licensed concealed carriers, prevents them from having a gun for self-defense. That regulation is inhumane, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter to the gunman. That's one of the regulations or laws, as you would say, that he broke. And so, yeah, these people always break numerous laws. They violate numerous policies in order to carry out their attack. And they demonstrate by doing that, hey, they're not worried about the price they're going to pay. And, if we would take away gun-free zones, they'd start worrying about the price they're going to pay.
Well, I mean, listen, that again, we talked about this. That's why there aren't many, if any, shootings at a pawn shop or a gun show or any of the things that go with that. Mark, but let me just ask you this. Again, how have the David Hoggs of the world managed to turn this enormous list of shooters who illegally acquired firearms and broke laws before they pulled triggers? How has the left managed to turn this into the NRA's fault?
Because they have the media in their hip pocket, the mainstream, lamestream, hateful, un-American, politically driven, let's just say propaganda wing of the Socialist Party, formerly known as the Democrats, in their pocket. And because I can't overstress how powerful that is. The media creates the narrative, and they drive it home. And they do it one of two ways: by pushing the narrative, saying, okay, this is the way we're going to craft this story, and they move with it, and then everybody else picks up on it. All you got to do is get an AP piece that's anti-gun, and every outlet out there picks it up and runs with it. The media is now creating and driving the narrative. Or they do it by refusing to talk about it at all, and that, of course, is a lie of omission. And that's how they drive the narrative. They do that by failing to talk about good things, about firearms, and ignoring the 4,000 times today the firearms will be used to save somebody's life. And it's interesting, Jacksonville doesn't qualify under the FBI's own description as a mass shooting.
Right.
2 people were killed. The guy killed himself. But it was in a crowded theater. It was in a crowded, Jacksonville Landing, a popular spot. The initial number was 4. That qualified. Now the media narrative is it's a mass shooting.
Right.
Let's talk about the mass shootings in Chicago this weekend.
Right.
And Mark, to Mark's point, though, exactly right. This is not a mass shooting by the FBI standards that we've relied on for decades. But that brings up what these heathens in the media do, the establishment media. I don't know how many reports I've seen. 3 killed at Jacksonville Landing, 3 killed.
Right.
They lump the attacker in with the innocents just in order to raise the number. It still doesn't hit the threshold for mass shooting, but they at least get to report 3 instead of 2. They are so biased against our rights, it is unbelievable, Curt.
Yeah. No, it's not unbelievable anymore. It's offensive, and it feels borderline like it's almost illegal in that they're representing. Because I said, and I saw James Woods with a tremendous tweet yesterday, and he said, listen, it will be absolutely tragic the next time an NRA member arms themselves and goes out and commits a mass shooting by illegally acquiring a firearm. It will also be the first time. It has never happened, and it hasn't. And that point is not lost on me when I live in the real world. And that's the thing that I'm trying to impart on people is in the real world, the only thing that the laws that the left wants already exist. That's my frustration, is they already exist. And we're talking about Maryland, which is probably one of the 3 or 4 toughest states in the country to acquire a concealed carry license. In addition to Illinois and California, places where, Illinois is the textbook definition of a war zone without actual war being declared. The thousands of shootings in that state each year are a testament to what the liberal gun laws can do. What they do is they disarm us, American citizens. And I'm wondering, are you guys, AW, in your reporting, and Mark on your show, I'm going to ask you first, Mark, are you seeing a more vocal conservative movement of gun owners? Listen, us 3, I don't know. I'm going to speak for you guys. I'm pretty sure you don't have any gun felonies on your records or any violent past offenses. But we're all members of the NRA. The NRA is, according to the left, a terrorist organization. But I'm wondering if you guys are seeing, starting with you, Mark, more conservatives getting upset and vocal about this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I kill bugs every day.
Right.
So I don't know if that counts, but
well, it does
yeah, I am. And then, by the way, if this phone dies, I will call you back on my other line just to let you know. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. Let me give you an example of how. I'll use my own personal example. When I saw the news breaking on this, I was in Minnesota doing show prep for the live Minnesota State Fair show on Sunday when this news about Jacksonville was breaking live. And within minutes, I began to see attacks on the NRA, and I thought to myself, where the hell does the NRA come from in this?
Right.
This is a guy who lost a gaming thing. We didn't even know what it was at that time.
Right.
And the left is attacking the NRA and saying, if you want to take down the NRA, what the hell did the NRA have to do with this? Absolutely nothing. But they know they can get away with it. It just goes back to what we were talking about before with the media. The moment they open their mouths, they know the media is going to pick it up and they're going to control that narrative, again, pushing the National Rifle Association. And I've seen a lot of commentary come back in some of my emails saying other people noticing this. Where did the NRA come from? Yeah, people are angry about it. And I think they're getting more vocal about it. And that's going to be detrimental to the left's ability to want to take the House or any other election, because this is driving good, decent, law-abiding Americans who are fed up enough. And I hope it ends a little bit of apathy and complacency that we've talked about to put them right at the polls.
Hey, AW, let me ask you in a little different way. What Mark just said, I'm starting to see liberals, maybe more moderate liberals, but I'm starting to see, along with the walkaway movement and others, I'm starting to see people on the left say, listen, I'm a liberal, but this is just flat out wrong what the media is doing and how it's portraying this stuff.
Right. Well, I would agree with you. I mean, you look at one of the king liberals, Dershowitz, and this is not a gun issue. This is a different issue, but the way he's defended Trump. And, and he's come out and said, look, the most dangerous position you can take in America right now is a likable position toward Donald Trump. And I think Dershowitz, he has turned out to me to be a breath of fresh air. And again,
I had him on Friday.
Issue.
Yeah, I had him on Friday, and he has turned into you know what? I argue, AW, he's what Democrats used to be. He's a rational thinker. Yeah, you know what? I think we agree more on social policy than we would argue. But he's he's someone who votes for the best person at the end of the day, and not necessarily the person that belongs in his party.
Right. So I think that makes the point that you're asking. I think that there's some people even on the left are going, hey, folks, this has just gone a little bit too far here. And in Dershowitz's case, he'd say it's gone a lot too far.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to close out with this one. I want you to give me 30 seconds on your thoughts. We live in a country now where the NRA is represented by the mainstream media as a terror group. Yet Antifa is somehow a group that represents free speech. How does that work?
They support it's part of the radical left. And because it's part of the radical left, they live in the same tent. They live in the same bubble, and they believe in the same things, much why we heard that ridiculous commentary from Cuomo talking about moral equivalency and seemingly defending the violent tactics of Antifa, because he agrees with some of the things the violent left and radical left agrees with, much like why the rule of law in Washington is gone now, because there are certain people in the party of the left now, the socialists, who don't care about the law as long as they don't care about the law of the land as long as they like the outcome if it's in their favor, regardless. Even if that requires them to diss the law and the Constitution, then it's okay. And that's the danger that we see today.
Yeah, AW, real quick, NRA might be the most law-abiding group of people in this country. We know for a statistical fact that members of the NRA are less likely to commit a crime than police officers. How are we, the terrorist group, and a group like Antifa, a bunch of spineless, coward, mask-wearing frauds, how are they on the right and we somehow are being painted as the bad guys?
Well, it comes down to what Mark and I talk about so often when we're on his show, and it's the establishment media has a template. They can't let that template be violated, and that means they can't report justified defensive gun uses. They have to suppress those. They can't report the good things that the NRA does. They have to suppress that, because part of the template is to shame the NRA into silence, and that's because the NRA is so powerful, and they really are. There's 6 million members. I mean, the left can't touch that with any of their groups. They can't touch it.
And growing.
And so they just have to do what they can, the old school tactics, political correctness of shaming you into silence. Fortunately, it appears the NRA in the last 3 or 4 years has reworked their approach to life in that they are right in the middle of it, and if you bite, they bite. If you spit, they spit. And I like the way they're doing that.
Well, it's the way we do things, guys. It's the way we do things. It's why a lot of liberals and don't like us, because when you in a sense, I don't want to put them on a pedestal because I don't mean it this way, but when we speak truth to their power, they don't get offended. They try and destroy our lives. It's very different. This is not about right and wrong. This is about we're right, and if you oppose us, we're going to shred you and destroy you publicly, whether it's right or true or not. So, gentlemen, listen, I gotta hang up. I apologize for the short. I would love to spend all day talking to you guys. I very much look forward to catching up, Mark. Next week we're going to talk about this event that's going to be going on, and of all places in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, the Gun Rights Policy Conference.
Yes, and we're going to be there and speaking, and I look forward to it. AW, thank you, buddy. Mark Walters, Art of American Radio, thank you. Catch up with you guys. All right, gentlemen. Once again, I want to thank Mark and AW and Kyle Drennen from the MRC Media Research Center, guys. I highly urge you to check it out as one of the few places left to get truth. I want to. I've kind of switched over from doing winners and losers to pontificating, I guess is the way you could put it, at the end of my show, because I feel like I know I overvalue some of the things that I say in my opinions, but I guess it's my show, and I want to make my points, and I'm going to do that. And today is no different. You heard the other day. If you haven't seen the video, as uncomfortable as it is, I would urge you to see it for no other reason than this. There was a shooting at a gaming convention in Florida, and I had my kids listen to it. My youngest is 16. For this reason, for no other reason than this. We live in a day and age when 3 or 4 seconds can be the difference between life and death. If you listen to this piece, if you go to YouTube and you listen to the live stream on Twitch, unfortunately, I feel like I need my kids to understand what a gunshot sounds like in public. If you listen to this piece, like many others, you will hear the gun go off, and knowing full well what you're listening to, you obviously become much more aware of this shooting quicker than the people at the event. But it's something we now have to pay attention to. I'm not talking about living your life afraid, not in the least. I'm talking about living your life in the world we now live in. The justification for these public shootings, the media will give you left and right reasons why it happens. It happens because human beings are sinful and fallible and scarred and wrong and all the things that go with that. But I believe in my heart of hearts that at the center of most people is a good thing a good person trying to make it happen. But the fact of the matter is this: I'm a member of the NRA. The left would have you believe that I am a terrorist. The left would have you believe that I'm against gun laws. The left would have you believe that I'm okay with people being shot publicly. None of that is even remotely close to true. But the narrative the left has painted is that let me just repeat this as I said earlier. The NRA is comprised of 6+ million people who are, by statistical fact, the most law-abiding group of citizens in this country. There has not been a mass shooting done by a member of the NRA, and oh my God, if it happens in the future, you watch what the left does with it. But the fact of the matter is, none of these mass shootings have ever been committed by a member of the NRA. In fact, the last time I heard about a member of the NRA and a mass shooting was in the Texas church shooting when a member of the NRA shot and killed the shooter. We are in a world now where the media has painted me as the bad guy. That somehow, in some way, and I know my life, and people that know me, I have never uttered a racist statement in my life, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. Yet I have been turned into the enemy. How is it that a bunch of mask-wearing, spineless cowards belonging to a group of fascists, calling themselves anti-fascists, has garnered the support of our mainstream media, yet law-abiding citizens like me and you and other members of the NRA are turned out to be the bad guys? Dana Loesch's, the Mark Walters, the A.W. Hawkins. Think about that. when the next time you turn on the news channel and look for news, it's hard to get. I don't care what channel you're talking about anymore. You have to go out and find the truth. And there is no greater truth than the NRA represents law-abiding, Constitution-loving American citizens. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Thanks to Mark Walters, A.W. Hawkins. Thanks to Kyle Drennen. You guys have a great day. God bless. We'll catch up with you guys tomorrow.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.